Good morning, everybody. Hope y'all doing okay today. Thanks for tuning in. If you like any of the content I've been posting up or my take on anything, consider giving me a like, share, comment, subscription. Hit the notification bell if you want to know when I post up new things. And something that I've been saying for a long time is if there's something that you want to know my opinion on, even if it's something that I'm not terribly familiar with, I'd be more than happy to do a touch of research and form an opinion. So, all that said, I wanted to talk about something completely apolitical. Kind of two parallel stories on this one. So, the town I grew up in, one of the routes that I very commonly took home from running around when I was a kid with a driver's license, had this very notorious turn. The reason why it was notorious is because no matter which direction you were heading, someone was always crashing there. The turn was, the technical term is off camber. That's a car guide term, but essentially what it means is the bank angle of the road goes the wrong direction. So you're turning left and the road banks for a right-hand turn. And if the road was the least bit slippery, or you didn't know the road very well and went into that turn a little quick, you could end up sideways, and if you were no good at vehicle recovery, you'd spin out, or you'd crash into either the telephone pole or the tree, depending on which way you were going. On a residential street, mind you. It was just a convenient cut-through between two city blocks. Anyway, one time I'm coming home, the temperature's hanging right around freezing. I'm in my first truck. Temperature's right around freezing. It had been raining, a steady drizzle all day long. And wasn't doing anything overly silly speed-wise. I was actually just right up the road from my house at a friend's house. We were watching a movie. Coming home, and I hit that turn, get very sideways. I watch a mailbox go whizzing past the front bumper of the truck, and I'm sitting there thinking to myself like, oh, I don't want to hit that, and I'm turning to try to get the skid back, and when I get it back, it snaps and goes twice as hard the other direction, and I'm steering into that skid. And they always say, I found this out after the fact, look in the direction you want the car to go. Well, I'm turning, I'm hitting the brakes, and I'm looking straight at the telephone pole. Running the telephone pole, and it rocks back in the mud. Well, the lines snap tight due to tension, and the pole literally cracks and busts in half across the bumper of my truck when those lines snap tight, and the top half of it lands right outside my door. And for a split second, 18-year-old me is sitting there thinking, I can just back out of here and I can go home, and I'll tell mom and dad that someone hit my truck while I was sitting up at the apartment complex. They backed right into it. For a split second, that was what I was thinking. I was dumb. Well, I get looking around, and I realize that there's power lines draped all over my truck behind the cab, and I probably won't be able to get out of there due to the power lines. So I call 911, tell them where I'm at and what happened. And the police weren't terribly surprised I ended up where I did. I'd seen, me personally, like driving through there, I'd seen half dozen or more wrecks in that corner and heard about a great many more in just my 2 years of driving at that point. Get off that phone call Dad. It's pretty chilly outside, and gotta let him know what's up and get a ride home. Thankfully, it's like half a mile from where I was, maybe, but it's too cold for me to go hoofing. So when I was on the phone with 911, they said, hey, you need to stay in the truck. Don't know if the lines are still up. Don't want to get electrocuted. So I'm sitting there in the truck. It's stalled out. All the first responders are telling me do not start the truck for heat. I did not take a jacket with me because, again, I'm stupid. And it's 30 degrees outside. So the utility company gets there, shuts the power off to that line. I get out of the truck. I'm okay, basically. The only thing that happened is I didn't stop trying to get the truck back under control until I hit the pole. And so I was reaching for the shifter to downshift or something and steering one-handed. It was a manual truck. Reaching and steering, and so I moved my arm across the wheel, spinning it, and ended up locking my wrist right at the point of impact. So I jammed my wrist a little bit. It was pretty tender for a few days, but it cleared right up. So get out of the truck. Everybody's there. Mom, Dad, sister. We get the truck towed back up to the house because once they got the lines off of it, it actually backed itself out and didn't bust the radiator or anything. And one of the things that Dad said that was pretty poignant, because we get the truck off the tow truck at the house, and he decides he was going to run it right up the road to the McDonald's, get himself an apple pie and a unsweet tea. That was my dad, always unsweet tea. He taps this old truck on the dash and he goes, thanks for taking care of my boy. Now the short version of this story is get the truck to a body shop. It went over a curb with the front tires turned, did a bunch of suspension damage. When Dad drove it, the wheel was hanging off by like 110 degrees. So, no, it wasn't quite that. It was hanging off by like 50 or 60 degrees, so it was a lot of suspension damage in that truck. And got totaled. But he had insurance on the truck. I was 18, so I'm paying him for my share of that policy increase due to having an 18-year-old boy driving. And ended up getting another truck. But that was his main concern. He was upset that I wrecked due to the inconvenience of having to deal with an insurance company. And I think if you ask my dad, would you rather shoot yourself directly in the foot or spend an hour and a half of your life talking with a car salesman, he'd choose the first one. Well, fast forward, shoot, into that summer, I think. I'd already bought my replacement vehicle with the insurance money. And because I make really great decisions, I decided to buy a clapped out, mild out F-350 Super Duty. Well, about 10, 11 o'clock at night, when I kept no reasonable sleep schedule for any of the jobs that I did, I get a phone call from a buddy of mine. He's like, "Hey man, what you up to?" I'm like, "Nothing." He's like, "You got a strap, and can we use your truck?" I'm like, "What's up?" I'm riding with a friend and we ran off the road. I'm like, "Where y'all at?" And turns out he was 4 miles from the house. So I grab a tow strap, and out the door I go. Get out there, and right when I get there, there's someone else. He tells me where it was, and I knew where it was, sorta. I'd never been out this road before, but I had an idea where it was. So there's a guy that just happened upon them where they run off the road, and he's working on pulling them out. And like 2 minutes after I get there, the parent of this other kid gets there. Not my buddy, the dude that was driving. And he is fit to be tied that his son stuffed this car in a ditch. I mean, just really upset. The guy that pulled it out of a ditch is kind of like, "Well, at least your son's okay. You can always replace a car, but, you can't do that with your son." There was a woman that seen what had happened, like was going home and seen everything, and she stopped and kind of issued the same sentiment, and I'm kind of thinking the same thing. Don't know how much he's going to listen to me, though, because I'm just, a 19-year-old punk kid. Well, anyway, we end up getting the car out of the ditch. And one thing I gotta say is, I forget what the speed limit was on this road. It was maybe 25 or 35 was the speed limit. And the turn that they ran off on had to be taken at like 15 if you didn't know the road in the dark, which they did. They were going to meet up with someone else who they had an address and knew where they lived, but hadn't driven out that way before. And there was no sign to reduce speed. Like they legit walked the road back, and they're like, "Dad, look, there's no sign that says I should have slowed down. I just seen a turn and started turning, and all of a sudden the road kept getting tighter and tighter, and I kept turning, and I'm in the ditch." So, and we get this old car out of the ditch, and it doesn't look too beat up, but they go to move it, and part of the front suspension got ripped off of the subframe, and so the front wheel, instead of sitting dead still forward to backward in the wheel well, it's going forward, backward, and when it goes forward, the whole car, or when you put the car in drive, as it rotates, it's actually trying to climb over, the car body's trying to climb over the wheel. So it messed some stuff up. It ripped the welds off for the A-arm mount. Really did a good job. But the body of the car is basically intact, and the dad's just fit to be tied over all this, fit to be tied. And in my, 17 years of driving now, I've been in a total of 3 car accidents, 4 car accidents while I was driving. A few of them were my fault, or weather, but my fault. I've totaled out a total of 2 vehicles in that time, and I had to find a replacement for it, and it sucks dealing with the insurance company. One way or another, it does. The most recent accident I was in, I was sitting dead still in construction traffic. I had to come to a rather quick stop because of people in front of me. Get stopped. I'm checking my mirror. I look behind me. I see the car behind me nosedive and then rock back. I'm like, okay, good. And then they get hit and shoved into me. And just dealing with the insurance company on that sucked, because they're like, look, you might have to pay your deductible and your extra on your rental, and that. I'm like, I didn't cause this wreck. I avoided a wreck because I didn't rear end the guy in front of me that just stopped due to the construction traffic because he wasn't paying any attention, texting on his phone. They're like, we understand that, but you still might have to pay. I'm like, okay, whatever. So anyway, everybody ended up being insured. Deductibles and everything got taken care of. But the part about it that just... So, like, I get being irritated about having talked to the insurance company. And I get being irritated... I get being irritated about having to deal with car salesmen. I used to be one. I don't like dealing with car salesmen in particular. I don't mind some of the people, I just don't like the process. But anyway, just when something like that happens, regardless of how inconvenient it is for you, regardless of the financial situation, regardless of any of the strain that it puts on you, be grateful for the fact that your people are okay. I guess that's a short version of it. And I know this might sound crazy. I've got a 14-year-old, and I'm already planning on, when they start driving, the way things are going to work out, this vehicle will be paid for approximately the time they start driving. So my game plan is to let them take this over, and then I'll go get something new to drive, because this will have all the miles on it, but be a 5-6-year-old car with a lot of modern amenities and safety features on it still. So just go get something new and hand this down to one of my kids. Has always been the plan. And it's slow, it's good on gas, but I'm fully expecting that it will end up in far worse shape than it is, or than it will be the day I hand it off, because they're teenagers. And I know what I was like when I was a teenager, and I was stupid, especially when it came to cars. So if they get in an accident and total this little car out, I'm going to try to keep in mind that they built a bunch of these. It's got insurance. No biggie. I can't get another one of my kids. Folks, I've gone on long enough. That's all that's on my mind on this one. Y'all take care. Thanks for tuning in. Catch y'all next time.